Hello, my name is Brad Rebecker, and I'm an associate professor at Albion College in the biology department. I'm also the director of the Lisa and James Wilson Institute for Medicine. I'm here to talk with you today about whether or not you should take the COVID-19 vaccines that are in development. So as I mentioned, I'm a faculty member at Albion College, and I'm also trained in vaccine science. That's what I got my PhD in, and it's really one of my favorite topics. And I like to think about how vaccines work, and I like to think about the impact that vaccines have on our lives and our communities. And it's really important in my line of work to make sure that, as excited as I am about vaccines and how they work and how they can benefit people, that everyone understands the benefits that vaccines have towards them as individuals and to their community. So I want to start off by talking about just briefly the situation at hand. This is the situation that we're facing now. These are a bunch of screenshots and data points of the lives we're living. The number of folks that are hospitalized, if you look at the top left-hand side of the screen here, that have been increasing steadily since the beginning of October. The daily deaths that on average are hitting over 2,000 per day, right? The fact that our kids aren't in schools, that we can't see our loved ones. And when public health officials look at this, there's a few key ways we know to stop this pandemic, right? So our social measures, our social distancing, wearing masks, those are important features, right? Medications that may come online. But really the key to all of this, to end this pandemic, is the rise of vaccines. But here's the catch. Do people really want the vaccine? And will they take it? So this study that's got all kinds of busy lines on here is from this last weekend, talking about whether or not people will really take the COVID vaccine when it comes out. And importantly, what we see is that it varies across gender and race and ethnicity and age and education levels and party affiliation and income. And however, as I stated at the beginning, everyone needs this vaccine. So how do we get the information to everyone to show that this vaccine is safe, that it works, and that it's here for all of us? We know that regarding race and ethnicity, that there are historical injustices and current injustices in the healthcare system. We know that these things have damaged the confidence in a variety of communities, including the Black community. And yet it is so important that African American individuals receive this vaccine because the data also shows that folks from that community have been overwhelmingly impacted and disproportionately impacted by this disease, as well as older folks are disproportionately affected by the disease that really touches all of us. So let me sidetrack for just 1 minute. I won't go too professor teacher on you here, just to talk about the importance of vaccines in the past and in the current. So vaccinations are amongst the greatest therapies and medicines that have ever been created. They work very, very well. They're highly efficacious. They're cost effective, and many times either governments or companies provide them at cost. So they're not expensive compared to like cancer drugs or other things, right? We can vaccinate a large group of people that will protect the rest of the community that maybe they can't take it. Maybe that they have an underlying condition that makes them unable to take the vaccine. This is this herd immunity effect by vaccinating a large swath of the population. And these vaccines all aim just to manipulate our immune systems, to train it, right? It's like practice. You're going to practice to train for that fight. It's giving the immune system practice so that when it does see that disease, it can defeat it. The table on the right-hand side shows some successes. These are all vaccines that are recommended for children. So we got these vaccines, or your children or grandchildren got these vaccines on this schedule here recommended by the CDC, right? And this childhood immunization program has been essential for wiping out and limiting massive amounts of disease and death over the past 100 years. But what makes a vaccine a good vaccine? How does it get to that page? All right, so these are some features of effective vaccines. They have to be safe, right? That's the very first thing. All vaccines have to be safe. They have to protect, they have to do their job, protect us from what the infectious agent is. And that protection should be sustained, right? We don't want to get to do this every year. We want to have 1 or 2 shots to give us lifelong immunity, right? That immunity should involve B cells and T cells to produce antibodies to neutralize these pathogens, these viruses. And the last road there, when I talk to my students, that's always the most important. It's got to be practical. We've got to be able to get it. It's got to be low cost. It's got to be stable. It can't give us side effects. We can't go in there for 5, 6, 7 shots, right? That's not practical. And so those practical considerations are super important. So I'm going to talk about the COVID vaccine in these lines about safety, protectiveness, right? Does it actually arm the immune system properly? And is it practical? So let's first start off about talking about safety and how we determine safety. And this is a big question that people are having, is how safe are these vaccines? What's the process look like? How can we be sure that this is safe for me to take or safe for me to tell my kids to take? All vaccines, whether in the past or in this COVID situation, have gone through the testing that you see here on the screen. This preclinical testing. So even though these are new vaccines, and I'm putting in air quotes, these have been tested in the laboratory and in cells and in animal models to make sure that they work and that they're safe and that there's no side effects. That's the first level of testing. We call it preclinical. This past spring, the phase 1 trials, these are clinical trials, the phase 1 clinical trials started for these vaccines back in the spring. And that's where you take a couple, 10 to 20 healthy volunteers to receive the vaccine to check to see if there's any side effects in humans. This is the first time the vaccine's been given to humans. Once that check is passed and everyone was healthy and the vaccine looked like it was safe, then it moves into phase 2. The phase 2 starts getting into broader populations in the hundreds, right? And maybe there's a couple different doses to figure out what dose is the best in phase 2 as well. You're really looking to see, does the vaccine retain its safety profile? Is it still safe now that we've done hundreds of people? And does it start to work? Now we're starting to see, like, does it actually really work? What kind of immune response does it produce? And the phase 3 trials, that's what we're just kind of in right now, and some of these are being approved in the COVID vaccine setting, is now we're in the thousands of people. And in the case of the COVID vaccines, it's been tens of thousands of people for each vaccine. All right. So now as you expand the number of people, right, some of these rare events that might happen, that's when you would expect to see them on the safety profile. And so the phase 3 data is really important to see, are there any rare events that are happening? How does it work for older adults? How does it work for African Americans or Hispanic individuals or for kids or pregnant women? This would all come out in the phase 3 data. All right. At that point, this is what we saw last week for the Pfizer vaccine. The vaccine can be approved. And then after approval, there's still post-review that will take place in phase 4. And this FDA review will be taking place for other vaccines from Moderna and from AstraZeneca and others in the future. So just this quickly, this is from the New York Times. This shows us how many vaccines are currently in development in clinical trials. So just the phases I just explained to you, the phase 1, the phase 2, the phase 3, and then some of these vaccines are now being approved, right? It tells you how many are in the pipeline. So that's a lot of vaccines in the pipeline. Remember, phase 3 is in thousands of people. So worldwide, tens and thousands, now that adds up to hundreds of thousands of people, are getting these COVID vaccines to check for safety and to see how well they work. All right, so now we get to look at our first actual COVID vaccine. This is the vaccine that got approved last Friday from Pfizer and BioNTech. All right, so what I want to talk with you about this vaccine is let's go through those 6 levels of what makes an ideal or a good vaccine. Let's look at the results. This is the results that were published and presented to the FDA last week. Is this vaccine safe? Yes. All right, there were no severe side effects with this vaccine, only mild to moderate reactions. So a little bit of pain and redness and swelling. Some folks might have gotten a fever or a headache. It's important to note they did not get COVID-19. This is just a side effect of your body's immune response. It means that your immune response is healthy and active. This is a good thing to have that little bit of redness and soreness at the site of the location where you got your vaccine. There is no way that anyone can get COVID-19 from this vaccine. The vaccine does not contain the virus itself, just a little piece of its information. So the vaccine was safe. Does it work though? It was found to be 95% effective after the second dose. So it takes 2 doses. After that second dose, 95% of the people were protected from COVID-19, which is an amazingly high number, almost perfect. All right. How long does that protection last? We're not sure because this has only been happening for a few months. Does it activate the immune system properly? Yes. Right. The issue that you see in the news with this one, perhaps, is that the long-term storage requires really cold freezers, minus 60 to minus 80 Celsius. So it's not the most practical vaccine. Next one up here is the Moderna vaccine. This is going to be discussed by the FDA on Friday, and it's likely to be approved. So the information we have so far looks pretty similar, right? The safety profile looks just like we saw with the Pfizer vaccine. We're still waiting some more data, but so far everything we've seen looks really great. It's protective, 94% again after the second dose. And this one showed 100% protection against severe disease. That's an important consideration. So for folks that get vaccinated, even if they do on a rare chance get COVID, they're not going to get it to the level they need to be hospitalized or certainly not die from. That's a big, big point. It arms the immune system the way we want it to with antibodies and T cells. And this one is a little bit more stable. It doesn't need to be kept as cold as the Pfizer vaccine. So the last one that I want to talk with you all about is another one that should be coming out very, very soon that we might have a chance at taking. This is from the University of Oxford in England and the company AstraZeneca. So the data we have on this one is a little bit less than the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines. However, it so far again has showed us that there's been no severe side effects in phase 1 and phase 2. We're still waiting for the results of the tens of thousands of patients to come out. The protection on this one's a little bit more mixed. It doesn't seem to be as protective at preventing against COVID disease as the 2 that we just saw previously. So we're going to say up to 90%, but we saw in some of the populations, because this was conducted across the world, there was only 62% with a standard dosing regimen. So they might have some work to do here to get this efficacy up higher. Does it arm the immune system well? Yes. We still get antibodies and T cells. The key thing for this vaccine, even though it doesn't work as well, this one is easier to produce and it's much more stable. So this is why this one is generating interest across the world, because we can make billions of doses of this vaccine very quickly, and it can be stable in a refrigerator. It doesn't need to be frozen, which is really important in areas of our country and in the world that have less access to that kind of technology. All right, let's summarize here. So we've seen 3 vaccines: the Pfizer, BioNTech, Moderna, and the University of Oxford AstraZeneca vaccines. So far, all the data that's come out is that these vaccines have been safe and highly effective. All right, and that's got to be our first questions is this vaccine going to harm me, going to harm my family? Is it safe for us? And the answers so far are yes. Yes, they are. Are they effective? Yes. And as I talked about at the very beginning of this presentation, the only way out of this pandemic is through measures like this. And we all want to get back to normal and live our lives with our loved ones as we have in the past. And so I'll ask you, how can we convince people to get vaccinated? We need to share information and have conversations with people that you know, in your family, in your church, in your community, and say, yeah, the data, nothing's been skipped. There's been no short process here. Everything checks out, and these vaccines work, and they're good. With that, I'll say thank you for listening.